Hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Andrea and this is Andrea Beyond Borders. Today I have a really great video for you all. A little bit of a chit chat, but a lot of encouragement that I wanted to share with the women travelers of the world. I get a lot of questions about traveling abroad internationally by myself, and for many years I actually put off traveling because I had no one to go with. And it wasn't that there was just no one in my life, it's just the timing never worked. Either I had the funds and friends didn't, or friends had things going on in their life where they couldn't go, family couldn't go, timing was wrong for them as well, or finances were not at a good space for them. And so I kind of always put off traveling and going places that I really yearned to go. And I finally said, you know what? I am not going to do this anymore. I am going to go out and travel alone. And it has been the most freeing, the most exhilarating, educating. Oh my goodness, the amount of education that I've learned by traveling abroad and getting outside of my country and expanding my experience and my understanding of culture is just unmatched. It really is. There's just so much I've learned about the world and people. And so I wanted to use this video to kind of talk through how, if you're someone that is looking to travel, but you haven't done it because you're afraid to travel alone, I'm going to hold your hand and walk you through how I got to traveling on my own and give you some tips so you can start planning to travel on your own too. So if you're looking for that kind of information, stick with me. I'm going to get you to booking your first flight. First, before we get into the tips, I want to address some of the concerns that I've often heard in conversations that I've had with women about traveling alone. One of the first things is personal safety, and that's a real concern. I have those same concerns, even though I've been traveling now nearly 10 years by myself globally. I still have personal safety concerns. And so some of the things that I do to alleviate those concerns is preparing in advance for where I'm going. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But I want you to know that there's personal safety concerns right in the city that you're in, right? If you're driving to another town, if you're flying to another city, there are things that are happening across the US today that can be personal safety concerns. And as a matter of fact, I think if I did some stats, you probably have a lot more concerns here in the US than you do in some of the cities abroad. So I'm just saying, when you prepare, I think you can alleviate or at least manage the risk of some of those personal safety concerns. But I don't want you to think that personal safety is not a real concern. It very much is, and it's something that I think about in every country that I do. And that's why I do the maximum research that I can to learn about the city that I'm going to, the country I'm going to try to alleviate some of those risks, and also make sure that I have plans in place just in case something happens. Loneliness and making friends. That's a real thing too, especially if you're an introvert like me. Believe it or not, I'm an introvert. I like to call myself an extroverted introvert. So what I define as an extroverted introvert, and I know a lot of people use that term, but I've been using this for a very long time before I've heard people talk about it. It is naturally, I am introverted and I would rather be in my own space. I'm very much a loner. But when pushed out on stage, I force myself to be extroverted. So that's kind of why I call myself an extroverted introvert. But what I really love about traveling solo, even as an introvert, it forces me to meet new people. And I gotta tell you, this has worked out really well for me. I have now accumulated friends around the world because I go solo. The thing is when you're out with friends and family and you're traveling, you tend to stay in your pack and you're probably not as inclined to be curious about the people around you. And so I find that when I travel solo, I get more chatty, I get more curious. I'm talking to the person at the front door of the hotel. I'm chatting with the bartender about best places to go. And unbeknownst to me, I'm starting to collect new friends. We end up, oh, let's exchange Instagram. Oh, I'll tell you where to go. Oh, I have a friend that sells that. I'll, shoot you the address and you can go check it out if you want. Like, it just becomes a really great experience where I'm open to a lot more things as an individual traveler than I would be if I was going with someone else, because I'll tend to keep my dialogue between me and the group or me and the person I'm with versus branching out and just kind of talking to any and everybody. But let's say you're a person that's not that extroverted and you can't force yourself to ask questions and talk to people that you don't know in random settings. You can also do group tours. As a matter of fact, I do have a store link down below. So if you're planning your trip and you're looking for group tours to do in different countries, I do have a store with all the different tours that I've been on across different countries that you can also go on as well. It is an affiliate link, so I do want to share that I do get paid a percentage of whatever it is that you book, but it has been really great for me. I find that I meet and connect with so many people similar to me who are on trips solo until they decide to do a group tour, and then we kind of mix and mingle within our group tour and we find out where each other are, where each person's staying, and sometimes we connect afterwards, or we connect on Instagram, or we share like, hey, I went here, did you go here? Okay, make sure you go here. Don't go here. Everyone's saying to go there, but the food is terrible there. So it's a really cool experience when you're in a group setting on the group tours to also meet people. So there's tons of ways to connect and network with people. You will not be lonely, I guarantee you that. Navigating unfamiliar places. I actually called my dad the other day and I was like, Dad, I just had a realization why I'm so good at navigating places. And he said, why? As a child, my dad used to always take us on little trips, whether we were on the train or whether we were driving in the car. And specifically when we were in the car, my dad would always say, hey, Andrea, you see that big donut? Hey, Andrea, you see that McDonald's? Hey, Andrea, you see that mountain? And then when we would come back home, he'd say, tell me how to get home. And he's like, remember the landmarks. Where do I turn? Do I go left or I go right? Where do we come from? Do we come from the donut or do we come from the corner? And that kind of helped me learn how to navigate. And so for me, it actually comes natural nowadays because I'm always looking for landmarks. Like, what do I need to remember as I'm being taken somewhere and as I'm returning home? Or if I'm coming back to the country, how do I navigate back to where I wanted to go because of the landmarks that I've seen? So that's one of the things that I have naturally inside of me. But then on top of that, it's the preparing for the trip, mapping out where you want to go, looking at the route, using Google Maps. There's so many things that you can do to help you navigate in foreign countries. So do not let that hold you back from planning a trip. Preparation is going to put you at ease. You go unprepared, you're going to be anxious. It's all about preparation. Handling challenges independently. I will say that traveling abroad solo, it will help you manage and troubleshoot, help you with your thinking. You do think on your feet when you're traveling abroad. I do think that, again, preparation is going to alleviate a lot of that, but there are times you do need to really think on your feet sometimes when you're on a trip. I've got to say, there were like only 2 times that I had to really sort things out, and I don't even think it was a real sort things out. It was more of a like, oh my gosh, I thought something was happening that wasn't happening. And I gotta tell y'all about that story another time, but boy, oh boy, my mother and I, we were scared. And it turned out to be nothing. But that was a time where we had to like quickly think on our feet. And then the only other time I can think of was a hotel situation that really went left. in one of the countries that I was in. And the thing is I was prepared. I am such a planner. It's like not even funny. When I go on a trip, I have all my documents, I have all my hotel information, I have 1-800 numbers, international numbers that I need to call if something goes bad with the hotel. So again, planning is really going to help address any potential concerns that you might have when you're out of the country. Also, I'll look up where the US embassies and consulates are just so I'm aware in case anything goes awry. You just never know, but nothing has ever really happened. So goes right back to planning. Planning is always going to help address a lot of your concerns. And if you're feeling anxious about something, or maybe you didn't really address in your planning, plan for it. Do the research. Take away the unknown in that space so you feel more confident going into that country. Okay, so now that we talked about a lot of the concerns you may have, and if you have any that I did not address, please drop it down in the comments below and respond directly to you in the comments. But those were a lot of the concerns that I've heard from my network, as well as some of the concerns that I had prior to starting my travel solo. Now I want to segue into why it's completely okay for you to plan your trip on your own. Here's the thing. Whether your friends are ready or not, the worst thing is to start planning for a trip and then all of a sudden your friends can't go because plans fell through or something came up and now you no longer can go on that trip. Or you're constantly seeing other people go on trips, or you're following people on Instagram and you're saying, oh, I would go on that trip, or one day I'm gonna go on that trip. It doesn't have to be one day. You can totally be selfish and go by yourself. I know for me, in addition to traveling alone and getting to meet new people, I also really enjoy the solitude, if I'm being quite honest. Just being able to be one with my thoughts, whether I'm on a train going from country to country, or whether I'm on a boat across the Amalfi Coast, or whether I'm in the bustling markets of Marrakesh. I just love being one with myself and my thoughts, and just the spiritual connection that I have to like God's beautiful green earth, and how different we are as people, but how similar we are as well in terms of simple things that we all need: food, laughs, love, connections, all those things that I get on these trips. And there's a lot of aha moments for me on solo trips because I can be one with my thoughts. I actually do a lot of journaling on my trips. I bring a travel journal specifically for traveling that I keep in my suitcase, so that when I have a thought that I really want to get out, I just pull out my journal and I write. So I think that going on solo trips, it's okay to be selfish. It's okay to go alone. It's okay to see the world by yourself. And it's also okay to go with someone, with a companion. But this is really to encourage those that are wanting to go and travel alone, but may not feel comfortable stepping out. Now let's talk about those safety concerns. One of the things that I do when I'm planning a trip is I do a lot of research about the city that I'm going to. I look up what safety looks like for that particular city in terms of crime rate, neighborhoods that you want to stay away from, neighborhoods you want to stay in, especially since I plan my trips myself. If you're leveraging an agent, they should be doing these things for you, but you should also be doing them for yourself, even if you have an agent, just to make sure. For example, once the trip is booked, if you're not booking yourself, you should go back and kind of look at some of the cities that they are proposing that you stay in, just to make sure that you feel comfortable with the environment. Also, I like to take into account the things that I like to do. I like to be in neighborhoods and cities where I can walk. I am a walker when I am out of this country, and so it is important that I'm able to walk day and night safely. And so those are the things that I read about to ensure that when I'm off walking and just exploring and walking into random stores and restaurants and coffee shops, that I am safe and there's no one behind me trekking me while I'm doing my walking. Now, keep in mind, as a tourist, you have to be mindful. You have to keep your head on the swivel no matter where you are. Even here in the States, I remember my mom had told me, walk with a purpose, walk with intention. So I walk, but when I walk, it's a very intentional walk, like I'm going somewhere and I know what I'm doing, and that if you run up on me, it is not going to be easy. That's the kind of walk I do when I'm out of the country. So just walk with purpose and walk with intention as well. And then I love bringing my AirPod Max and having an amazing playlist so that I'm doing all of my walking. But here's the thing, it's gotta be safe, because I don't want to put my headphones on and then I can't hear the surrounding environment and something can happen. So I just kind of keep those things in mind. One thing I'm thinking of right now when I think of like a neighborhood that is really safe, Kensington, London. So Kensington is like a neighborhood within London, and I love staying there. And I'll go out at 10 o'clock at night and walk to a cafe that I love to go to that's open 24 hours. I'll put my headphones on. It's about a 20-minute walk from my hotel, and I'll go out, I'll walk at night, and I just love the neighborhood. And yeah, it's just, I love it. And I'm all by myself and I feel completely safe. But I also did the research to make sure that the environment was good for that. If it's not, we don't do night walks or we don't do walks with headphones, and that's okay. I just have to know where I'm going and how to navigate those spaces, and that all comes from the research that I do in advance, and that makes me feel at ease. And if I don't feel at ease, I don't go. It's as simple as that. Another thing I like to do for safety reasons is I like to turn on my location or use apps that track your location for your family. There are tons of them out there, so you can research which ones you like to use. But I have one that I use with my family, and basically we're all signed up. We all have our location on in the app. And so even to this day, when I'm driving X, Y, and Z, my mom can see where I'm going. I don't really care, right? But it's really cool when I am away and out of the country, they can see me moving about and know where my last locations were. And that kind of gives me ease, but it also gives my family ease as I'm a person traveling alone abroad. So check into some of those apps that will allow you to add your family and allow them to have your location so they know where you are while you're traveling out of the country. Now, I want to address loneliness again. I'll address it briefly because I did kind of talk about it a little bit earlier, but I think joining tour groups are amazing ways to meet people while you're in any specific country and make friends. So once you get here, if you feel like, hey, I'd really love to have like a buddy while I'm here, or maybe tag along, go on a tour. And I would suggest one of those like long tours. I remember one time it was our first time in London, and I did the Stonehenge, Salisbury, Bath day trip, and it was like I think 12-hour or 9-hour trip. We got up early in the morning, went to the Victoria station, got on this bus with a bunch of people, and then we toured the whole day of different parts of England. Well, I ended up meeting a really good friend on that tour, and not only did we become friends on the tour, but when we got back to the States, I hung out with that person in Chicago for my birthday. So yeah, you meet people on these trips, you become friends, and sometimes they become lifelong friends. So definitely look into booking tours, especially those long ones, because you're with people for 9, 10 hours, 12 hours in the day. You're going to become friendly with those people. And then they could be someone that you hang out with a little bit later in your trip. So I think that's like one of the biggest tips I have. Also, I would say, practice chatting with people. So before you go on your trip, or maybe you take baby steps and you take a trip nearby, like outside of your state. Maybe you go to another state by yourself and you practice this talking to people, getting curious and going from one place to the next place and the next place with no plan involved at all, and see how that makes you feel. See how that disrupts your comfort zone and how comfortable you're with it, and then build from there. I think talking to local cafe people, going to restaurants and talking to hosts or owners of restaurants, especially if they're family-owned restaurants, that's a great way to really get to know the city and get to know the community and get to know all of the great places to go, and also get to know people. I can't tell you how many friends I've met or I've connected with and still am connected with on Instagram because I had conversations with the owner of a restaurant, the chef at a hotel, the doorman at a hotel. Like, I just get chatting with people and just start collecting friends like Pokemon. Collect them all. One particular topic we actually did not discuss: budget. I know traveling abroad at times can be really expensive, but it can be actually affordable as well. In my experience, I think the things that have cost the most have been the flight, because I'm a person that, or not all flights, let me correct myself. The flight from the US to whatever the first country is, that's the one that costs the most for me, because I gotta be comfortable. So I tend to want to fly first class. And so that's the pricey ticket. But then once I get to that country and I'm hopping from country to country, it's economy all the way. Flights are really short, anywhere from 45 minutes to 2 hours max. There's no need for me to buy a first class ticket going 2 hours away, even 4 hours away. So once I get into Europe or get into Africa, I'm definitely going to be paying economy class. And those tickets are really cheap. I would say the average, why do you want to say average? Flying, once you're in Europe, flying from country to country in Europe, it's pretty cheap. So what's cheap? Cheap to me is under $100, up to $200, $250. That's cheap to me. Let me kind of give you an example. I got a flight from Morocco to Spain for, I think it was like 60 bucks. And that's recently. My flight from, let's see, Spain to Greece was like 100 and something bucks. So it's really inexpensive. And that's US dollars, by the way. It's really inexpensive, like once you get to the European continent and I would say African continent and that's my dog Morocco. Northern Africa. It gets really inexpensive, and it's a very short time to fly in between. So again, the flight from the US to Europe, or the US to, really wherever you're going that's 10 plus hours, that's gonna probably be the most expensive flight that you get. And then if you just do your planning where you're going from country to country within that continent, you can probably explore the whole continent really, really inexpensively. Is that a word, inexpensively? I think so. And I will also say your flight from, let's just say from US to London, let's use that one. That flight is really not that expensive if you're okay with flying economy. You can probably get a seat anywhere between $600 to $800, and depending on who you fly with as well. I fly with one particular airline, so an economy seat would probably be about $800 on that airline. But I think you can get by on other airlines where it might be a lot less for an economy seat. So you figure, and then also where you're coming from in the US as well. Coming from LA, you have a longer distance, so it's going to be a lot more. If you're leaving out of New York to go to London, it's going to be a lot cheaper. First of all, the flight's only 6 hours because you're already on the Atlantic and you're just going across the ocean. Whereas if you're coming from the West Coast like me, you've got to go the distance of the US, and maybe you're going up over Canada, past Greenland, or maybe they have you going across the US over to the Atlantic. It depends on the route, but but it's always a lot more expensive when you're coming from the West Coast all the way to London. But I say all that to say you can really be smart about your budget and your travel if you just cut back on some of the things and some of the luxuries that might increase the flight. But for me, it is a non-negotiable. If it's 10 plus hours, we got to do first class because my knees are not going to take it. She's a 5'10" girl. She can't do it. It's not working 10 plus hours. Now I want to really land the plane in this video and talk about enjoying the process of planning your solo trip. We've talked about some of the fears that you might have. We've talked about some tips that you can do to address some of those fears. Now I want to move into enjoying the process of planning your trip and going on the trip. So the itinerary, that is probably one of the best things I love to do when it comes to my trip. I don't think I enjoy it more than going on the trip, but I think I'm pretty darn close to the experience of the trip as well as planning the trip. I love going down rabbit holes and learning about the countries that I'm going to visit. Now, in my early days of planning my international trip, I pretty much stuck to the landmarks that everyone goes to. Like, I got to do all the landmarks, right? For example, with London, I told you I went to Stonehenge, I went to Bath, I did, the London metro area, I did Salisbury, I did all of the landmarks on the hop on, hop off bus tour. That was typically how I kind of got my feet wet in exploring different countries. But as I went to these countries and I had more conversations with people about where do they go as a local, I started to have a different lens on how I strategically planned my itinerary for my trips. And so my exploring and my research became more interesting, and I would read a bit more about the cultural nuances in any given country, the architecture, the history that took place in those particular countries. I tend to travel to locations that have a lot of history. I'm not really the all-inclusive resort type of person. I'm an individual that likes to go to countries that have buildings that have been here for thousands of years, and wars and politics and things like that that have happened in that country that have really shaped the world today. Those are the type of countries that I like to go to. So my research is usually around like, where can I go to get this information and see it for myself? That is what I do, and I really enjoy that. And so the cool thing about building your own trip is you can make it what you want. So if you're a person that's like, hey, I'm a foodie, I love food, you can go down the rabbit hole and find out what kind of food they have in these countries. For me, I like really nice restaurants, so I always try to make sure that I go to at least one Michelin star restaurant that I go to in every country that I visit. I've also started taking up cooking classes in countries that I visit. It's a part of me wanting to get immersed into the culture of the cities that I'm in. So for example, when I went to Rome earlier last year, I decided to go to a pasta making class. When I go to Spain this year, I'm planning to go to a paella making class. And then I'll also probably do something in Morocco as well. So you can really make your trip what you want, and that's the really exciting part of it. Like, you don't have to rely on someone to do it for you. You can go and do the research yourself. And even if you're not one to go and do the booking, that's fine. But you can go to your agent and say, hey, here's all the things that I want to do, or here's the type of things that I'm interested in. So they can put together an itinerary for you that is made and tailored just for you and your solo experience. So roll up your sleeves, dig down into the world of the internet and find out what it is that you want to do and where you want to explore, and have fun with it. The next thing I would say is, why don't you journal your experience? All the emotions that you're feeling, like the hesitancy early on from even considering doing a trip, the fun and excitement that you have as you're exploring and finding places to go, where you settle on, where you decide you're going to go, when you finally booked your first trip, when you went and got that passport. Today, journal entry, January 30th, 2025, I submitted my application for my passport. Like, all of those things were so, I remember them like they were yesterday, when I got my first passport and when I took my passport picture, when I went and got pre-TSA, or what is it, TSA pre-check. All of those things are things that I've journaled and I was really excited about, because so long I wanted to travel and so long I sat by and I watched the world move on. I watched other people travel and I did not, because I thought I didn't have anyone to go with. And when I made that decision to go out and discover the world on my own, and if people want to go with me, you can, but I'm booking this trip with or without you. And so all of those moments and all of those stamps on my passport, I just get so excited. Like, I can't wait for my next trip. And I'm really excited for you. Like, if you're one who's struggling with traveling alone, I just want you to be encouraged. I want you to get prepared, because I feel like if you prepare for your trip and you do the research and you understand where you're going and you learn about the cultural norms in those areas, I feel like it will relieve a lot of that anxiety that you might have taking this trip. And don't worry, I'm actually have some videos coming up to support you through this process, like the hacks that you can do when planning, what to pack for, what you need. I got you. I got you. Don't you worry. I will make sure that you are 100% prepared. Okay, maybe not 100%, but let's say 95% prepared for your trip. Any of the other 5%, there's nothing I can do. You experience it when you get there. But 95%, you will be good to go, ready to buckle your seatbelt, put your feet up, turn on that movie, and head out for 10 plus hours to wherever it is that you're deciding to go. So I want you to stop waiting, because the world is waiting for you. That is all I have for this video. I hope you found some encouragement and that this video really helped you or helped someone that you might know. So feel free to share. If you enjoyed this video and you want to hear more from me, please be sure to subscribe and turn on your notifications so you don't miss any of my videos coming up. I've got some vlogs coming out pretty soon, as well as some hacks for solo travelers. So I want to make sure that you get all the content that you need. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you much. And don't forget, travel smart, travel far, and I'll see you beyond borders.